Welcome back to day number 16 of my 31 days of Halloween themed drawing tutorials. Today's video, I'm gonna show you how you can draw this cool Frankenstein's monster from start to finish. No edits, no time lapse, it's all in real time, and it's almost an hour. So if you wanna draw along with me, keep watching. Okay, so let's draw Frankenstein's monster. Starting out, I'm using a 3000 by 3000, 300 DPI canvas. For my brush, I'm gonna start out with my standard Inker Streamline. That's part of my cartooning brush set. And for my color palette, I've already got it made up ahead of time, just like the rest of the series. So if you wanna follow along, you can download this for free. I'll link it down in the description below. Just go to my website, bjdell.com, under the YouTube reference materials section. You can save this as a JPEG from the website. Just go up to the wrench icon here, go to add, insert a photo. It's gonna go to your camera roll and bring that in as a separate layer, and then you can just long press each of the colors to add them to the colors as we go through the tutorial. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna switch my color here to the first green, and then we're just gonna draw an oval here for the head. Holding down with our pencils, gonna lock it into the shape. We'll just drag and drop in our color. And then I'm gonna move this around a little bit here and get it kind of centered. And then I'm gonna warp this, kind of bring down the bottom here wider. So that's gonna be the shape for our head. Let's go ahead and add the ears next. I'm gonna pull this over just a little bit, make sure it's centered. There we go. So we're gonna make a new layer by hitting the plus button, and then we're gonna drag and drop this down below that first layer. And then I'm just gonna draw in an oval here for the ear, drag and drop my color in there, and kind of fix this up a little bit. And we've got the left ear. So going back up to our layers now, let's slide this one to the left, and we're gonna duplicate. And then we're gonna go back up to the arrow here, and we're gonna flip this horizontally. We've got snapping turned on here, so that allows us to drag this over. And you see the blue lines, make sure that this is lined up from left to right. So there we go, we've got our ears in there. Let's go ahead and do our neck next, but these ears can now be on the same layer. So if we just pinch these together, or you can click this, it won't let me do it now, but if you click this and go merge down, you can do that as well. So we're gonna make a new layer. We're gonna drag and drop this down underneath, very bottom. And then I'm just gonna draw another oval down here. Color fill it there. We're gonna go back up to our arrow, and we're gonna warp this, just pulling down the bottom and then thinning out the top. So it kind of skinny at the top and comes down there like that at the bottom. And then I'm just gonna kind of cut that off here like this. All right, so we've got the neck in there. Let's go ahead next and let's go ahead and do the hair. So to do this, we're gonna go up to layer 3, the very top layer, and make a new layer. Then we're gonna go to our colors, and let's go over to the next color here, this kind of grayish black color. That's gonna be our hair. And we can go ahead and just draw a line here. That's gonna be for the top of the hair. And just kind of drag this and bring it in towards the front like this. And I'm not too worried about making this 100% perfect, because we can go back in and kind of clean this up here in a second. Do you want it to at least look the same from left to right? So there's that. Let's drag and drop the color in here. I've got a little bit of that background showing there, so if I go back to my head layer and just color that in with green, that'll work there. I'm gonna go back to the hair now and just kind of clean this up a little bit. So going back to that grayish black color there, I'm gonna go to my eraser, and I'm just gonna kind of pull down here and clean this up, get these tapers a little bit nicer on the ends. So they've got kind of that sharpness to them. Probably pull this down a little bit too from the top so it's not all the way up there against the edge. So you get a good taper there on that one. Same thing here, kind of pull in. Get this one nice and tapered there so it's sharp. Go back in and just fill in that line there. So that looks good. We can do the same thing here to the rest of it in the front. Pulling these down into a little bit better of a taper. I just really wanted to start out just to kind of get that main shape in there. That was my goal when I first started drawing it, just so it was kind of quick and easy. We can go back in and erase to get these a little bit sharper. Like this. Pull them back out. That's what we're left with. I think that looks pretty good for the hair. This side's a little bit thicker though, so now that I've pulled out all the way, I can kind of pull this in to match up this side over here. I think that's going to look a little bit better there. So we've got that. Let's go ahead and let's do the mouth next. I see another line down there peeking through at the bottom. Kind of hit that, so let's erase that real quick. Without getting too far up there to the bottom of the head. All right, so there we go. Let's go ahead and do the mouth. So to do this on that head layer, I'm gonna go ahead and make a new layer again. And I'm just going to make a big oval in here. This is gonna be for the mouth. Then let's grab the arrow up here and freeform selected. We're just gonna kind of move this in towards the center. Get it kind of the same on both sides there. All right, and from here, I'm gonna warp, and we're gonna kind of do this like grimace type of thing with the mouth open. So we're gonna pull in the center and then pull the sides back up. Just like that. Then I'm gonna go back to freeform and I'm gonna shrink it in just a little bit so it doesn't go clear to the edges. All right, I think that looks good there. Next up, let's go ahead and let's do the eyes. So for this, going to layer 3 again, we're gonna make a new layer and we're gonna switch over to white for the eyes. And I'm just gonna draw a circle, holding down with my Apple Pencil, and then my other finger is gonna lock this in as a perfect circle. I'm gonna fill that in. And then I'm gonna go ahead and slide this one to the left and I'm gonna duplicate it. So this way we have a left eye and right eye. And then I'm gonna grab my arrow here with uniform selected. Just gonna drag this over and just kind of connect these like so. Now that we've got those in there, we can go ahead and merge these together. So once again, just hitting that and merge down, or you can pinch them. I'm gonna go back up to my arrow now, and I'm gonna kind of make these just a tad bit smaller. And that's kind of where I want them. So I kind of want them to have a little bit of a meaner look though. And of course we're gonna have kind of like a really heavy brow come across. So I want these to be kind of cut. To do this, of course, you could try to draw them like that, or you could go back in with the eraser and try to draw a line. I personally like to use the edges of the canvas to do this. So if I go up to my arrow and I just drag this up to the top until those blue points there in the middle are on the edge of the canvas, and then hit my layers again, it's gonna cut off that right there in the middle. And when I bring these back down, you can see that we have the half of the eyes that we wanted. I know a lot of people hate that when you move something off the canvas, it cuts it off, but I use it to my advantage. So I know I've showed that in a previous tutorial, and hopefully you can put that to good use as well. So now that I've got that done, let's go ahead and do a nose. So let's go back. Actually, let's go to just this dark green for now. And we're gonna go ahead and make a new layer. We're gonna select the head again, hit plus for a new layer, and I'm just going to drag around this just to an oval there. And I actually want this to come over the eyes, so let's drag that up on top of the eyes. Going to my arrow again and going to freeform. I'm just going to kind of shrink this down and get it to exactly where I want it here. And I think that looks pretty good. Now that that's in there, I'm going to go ahead and long press my green for the body or the head, and then just fill that in now. I did it a different color just so we could see exactly how it looked, and that makes it easier since these are all the same color. And we're going to do the same thing next with the brow. So to do that, let's go ahead and I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. I'm going to go back to that darker green here, and I'm going to go ahead and let's see. Let's go ahead and just the layer we're on here, the nose, let's just make a new layer above that. This will be the brow. Just going to draw a big oval here and drag and drop, fill that in. Now I want this to cut off the same way that we did the eyes. So we're going to go up to the arrow. Instead of going to the top of the canvas, we want the bottom to cut off. So we're just going to bring it down here to the bottom. Wait for those to hit the edge. Hit our layers to lock it in. And then we're going to bring this back up. This is going to be our brow, but I need to make it a little bit smaller. So we're going to pull this in so it sits behind there, and then maybe pull the top down a little bit so it's not as far up there. Going to warp now, I can kind of pull it a little bit to the sides too if I want it to have a little bit different of a shape. So there we go, we've got the brow in there now. Once again, I'm going to long press my green, and I'm going to fill that in green. So we can't see it now, but it's there. It's going to stand out once we start going in and doing the shadows and highlights. Let's go ahead and give him some pupils in his eyes now. So if we go to our eyes here, and then selecting that darker gray color, I'm just going to go in here and just draw a couple of small circles here. Kind of want really, really tiny pupils. I think it's going to make for a pretty cute design. And then just going in here with white and doing some reflections in there. All right, so we've got the pupils in there. Let's go ahead and give this guy some teeth next. So to do that, we want to go ahead and go to, if you're following along, layer 5, the mouth layer. We're going to make a new layer above that, and then we're going to set this to clipping mask. So this is going to allow us to draw the teeth and not go outside of that mouth. It's just going to stick to the color that we've got in the mouth. Then I'm going to go back up to my colors here, and I'm going to go over to this color on the far top. This is going to be the teeth color here. And I'm just going to kind of start pulling in some teeth like this. Connecting these, so then I can just drag and drop my colors in there. There's that. Let's go ahead and do some here at the bottom as well. Kind of matching those up to the ones on the top that we did. Connect those, and then drag and drop our colors there. And I think I'll cheat here a little bit and just duplicate these and swap them over. So let's go ahead and slide the teeth to the left and duplicate. Going up to my transform, the arrow. I'm going to flip horizontally again. Make sure that I'm on uniform and just drag these over to the side. You can see here, since we use that warp on the mouth, it's a little bit off here. The side goes up a little bit further, so we just got to come in here and kind of color those in by hand. But there we go. We've got our teeth in there. So last for just main color flats is we've got to add the bolts in here to the neck. So let's go back up to our layers here, down to the neck. Let's make a new layer and let's drag this down underneath. So this is going to be the very bottom layer now. And then I'm going to go back up to my color palette, and this lighter gray here, the fourth one on the top row, that's going to be the start. So let's go ahead. I'm going to zoom in here so we can see a little bit better. And I'm just going to draw in just kind of a rectangle here. Going back in and erasing just to kind of clean it up a little bit. So there's that. Let's go ahead and from here, make an oval. It's going to be the top of the bolt there. And then I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer here, drag it in underneath. This is going to be the edge of that bolt. So going back up to my colors, I'm going to go to this darker gray here. I'm just going to pull down from the sides here. And then drag this around for the bottom. Come back up here and connect it. And then if it's not perfect, you can go back in there and erase to kind of make everything line up a little bit more, make the curve a little bit more like the top curve, whatever you need to do to make it look good. And then from here, I'm going to connect these. Didn't go all the way out with this, so I'm going back down to that bottom layer now. And we'll connect these. Going back in with my eraser then. Kind of hitting that overlap. All right, so we've got the bolt there. Let's go ahead and we'll group these together now. And then we'll slide this one to the left. We'll duplicate it, and then we'll just flip it around again just to save time. So going up to our arrow, flip horizontally, and bring it over to the side. So there we go. Got the bolts in there now. I'm going to pinch those together. And that's basically our color flats done. So let's go ahead and start working on the shadows and the highlights next. So to do that, let's go ahead. This is where we're going to start to come in with a lot of different layers. I'm going to combine the teeth into one layer now. And let's go ahead and start on the face itself. So selecting the face, I'm going to make a new layer here. And we're going to set this one to clipping mask. This is going to be the start of our shadows. And for this, I'm going to go up to my colors here. And I'm going to go in and choose this darker green to start out with. Going back up to my brush, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my texture brushes. And I want to go ahead and use sand for this one, just so it's got a nice, fun texture to it. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. And with this, just need to make sure that my sizes and opacity is right. So if you want to adjust the opacity so you don't necessarily have to worry about pushing too hard, you can drop that down. If you're comfortable with just pressing really light, you can keep the same opacity. It's totally up to you. And then for the size, just kind of adjusting that as you go. And I'm just going to start kind of pulling around this. And you can see this is why we put these all on separate layers. So we can go in and do shadows like this super quick and super fast. And you see it makes that pop out quite a bit. And it doesn't take a lot of effort. If you tried to do this by hand, you'd have to get everything 100% perfect. And it would probably take quite a bit more of finesse and time to get all that in there like that. So I'm just going to bring some shadows around here to start separating some of these different areas. Same thing around here and underneath that brow there, so that pops out some more. There's that. Kind of bring up one around here. So it kind of has that mouth coming up and the lip coming up and around, and then back down here underneath the lip going into the chin down here. Same thing over here, kind of building up the lip here at the bottom very lightly as it comes back around. So there we go. That's the start. Let's go ahead and go back up to our colors now. I'm going to switch over to this dark blue. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of come in here with some extra colors here. This is going to add just some extra values here and kind of work on building up this kind of three-dimensional quality we're going for. Fade that in. A bit more around here. See, it's starting to kind of bring this to life. We can do the same thing up here. Bring it in. On top here, you see that brow starting to come out now. I think I'll probably do some kind of wrinkles here in the forehead coming across too, so I'll just come on real light with a couple lines there. Those are starting to take shape. Now I'm going to go ahead and go in here and drop the opacity of this down just a tad bit so it's not as bold and bright. And then I'm going to go ahead and make one more layer on top of that and set that to clipping mask. This is where we're going to kind of darken in a lot of the stuff. So here what we're going to do is we're going to go into our... Oh, we still need the same one. We still need sand. We're going to go into our color palette and we're going to go to this darker gray here. Just kind of come in here and lightly go around some of the stuff that we already did, and it's going to just kind of darken up some of those shadows. And we're also going to come back in here too and adjust the opacity of this so it's not too dark. Just trying to get the right brush size here so it's not too heavy. Same thing up here. A little bit more of a line there on this crease. This one. All right, so that looks good. Let's go ahead and go to our opacity now. So if we go up to our layers, hit that N and drop the opacity just a tad bit here. I think that looks good there. I'm going to come around the bottom of this lip here and kind of build this up a tad bit. All right, so now that I've got that done, I'm going to start to kind of add in some highlights to this section. I'm going to kind of stick to one layer as we go instead of doing all the highlights at once and then all the shadows at once. We're just going to do this different areas first. So I'm going to go to this yellow now, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back down to the first shadows that we did here. We're going to do these on the same layer this time, just because I'm going to blend these a little bit. And we kind of want them on the same to be able to do that. Just going to kind of come in here with this yellow to kind of make some of these areas kind of pop a little bit. Just going in real light so the colors kind of fade in together. So now that I've got those, I'm going to come back in with white now. And I'm going to kind of hit a couple of areas with this white to make them stand out even more. Bring some down here. Also around the top of this lip here. All right, so now that we've got those worked in there, I'm gonna go up to my smudge tool and I'm gonna go to airbrushing and my soft airbrush. And I'm gonna smudge some of these together here. So I don't want to go too hard because I don't want to do that and lose all the texture that I've got. So I'm going to do it real light because I want to keep that texture, but I just want these to blend together a little bit more. So it looks like the colors fade really naturally here. And with this, just adjust your brush size as you go through, back and forth, just to get the right look that you're going for. Like I said, I don't want to do it too hard or too much though, because I don't want to lose that texture. All right, now that we've got those, we're going to do the same thing to that black layer here. So I'm going to go up there and just kind of smudge some of these in. You'll see it just looks a lot more natural. So there's that. And then going back to that darker gray here, I'm going to go in with my sand again and just kind of darken up some even more. And then go back in once again with that smudge to bring it home again. And painting like this, it does take some time. This is a lot more labor intensive than some of the other ways to create that I've shown in these tutorials so far. But I think that you'll agree after getting done with this, it really does give a nice quality, and you'll probably be pretty happy with the work you put in once you see the final results. Darken this up a little bit more down here. Back to the smudge. All right, so there we go. We've got the face done there. I think I'm going to blend in this yellow a little bit more on this side. All right, so let's go ahead and do the nose next. We're going to use the exact same technique. So with the nose selected, we're going to go ahead and make a new layer. We're going to set this one to clipping mask as well. I'm going to start with that dark green here at the bottom. And with this, I don't want to get it too dark because I still need that separated from where that hits that upper lip, so you still need to see the difference there. I'm going to switch back to the blue, kind of fade that up. Switch over to my yellow. Some of that in here, and then switch over to white for the brighter highlights there. Now we've got that. Once again, going to the smudge here. Kind of blending this all in together. Back up here to that darker gray. This one I'm going to just keep on this same layer instead of changing it. I know with the face I did it on two separate ones, but we'll just leave it like that. Then pulling out, you can see the kind of effect that gives. Really like the way that blends and fades the colors into each other. And if you zoom in, we've still got that texture in there. We didn't totally knock it out completely. So there's that. Let's go ahead and let's do the ears next. So for the ears, I think I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna alpha lock this because we need to do the insides of the ears. And I'm just gonna do these really quick and easy. I'm just gonna come in with that sand and just making this smaller. I'm just gonna kind of draw in some ovals here, instead of going in and trying to really super define these. I think that this will kind of work for this design here. And if you don't like that, if it's too textury on the sides, if you drop your brush size, this is going to work more like just a regular pencil. So you can always go ahead and do that for the edges. Totally up to you how you want them to look. Or you can fill it in real big like this. Then you can go back up to your eraser and go into the smudge or the sand on here. You can go back in with your eraser. The only problem here, we're on the same layer, so you can't. So you got to go back in with the green around like that. So however you want to do it, when you're on the same layer, yeah, you can't go back in with the eraser. That's why we've talked about before the benefits of using clipping mask over alpha lock too, because alpha lock uses the same layer, so you can't go in and erase with alpha lock. So there we go. I think that looks pretty good. So now we can start on the actual shadows and highlights on the ears. So we're gonna go back up to layers again, And we're going to make a new layer here and set that to clipping mask. Going back up to our colors, darker green first at the bottom. Bring that around, left and the right. Then to the blue. Make this a little bit smaller here. And then we'll do the yellow towards the top. And then the white. We're going to go back up to our smudge. Just kind of blend that all in together. All right, so there we go. We've got the ears done. Let's go ahead next and let's do the brow coming across there. So let's go ahead and go up to our layers again. Go into the brow, layer 8. Make a new layer. Set that to clipping mask. Going back to my colors, the darker green, coming down at the bottom here. Bringing that up, letting up as I go up. Going back into my blue now. And then going into my yellow. Use this a little bit more sparingly on this one since we kind of got the hair coming down there. It's not going to have a huge shine. Kind of got a light source coming from everywhere on this just because I kind of picture him in a lab, so we're probably going to have light coming from the top, you know, from the front hitting here, and I just want that nice yellow glow for a lot of this stuff just to kind of give off that creepy vibe, the Halloween vibe or the in the lab vibe. So there's that. Now we can go ahead and go to our smudge tool again and then just kind of work these in together. So again, not too much. Still want that texture showing through there, so we don't want to totally knock it out, but we just want enough that we can see it. So there is that. Let's go ahead and do the eyes next. So if we go down to the eyes, layer 6, I'm going to make a new layer here. Once again, set this to clipping mask. And then I'm going to do the eyes a little bit different. I'm going to go into my brushes, and I'm just going to use the airbrush for this one. And then I'm going to go to this fourth color here, this kind of blue on the side, and we'll just kind of bring in nice curved shadow around here to kind of build up the three-dimensional quality of this. There's that, and then I'm going to pull in the white here on this side because I don't want it coming, this shadow coming too far over. So I'll bring that down a little bit more. I thought I did the pupils on a different layer, but I guess I didn't. So I'm going to go back in there and do the pupils again on top of this layer because I don't want to cover those up. So if I go back to my gray color there, we'll just do these pupils again. Sorry about that. Going back to the white for the highlights. All right, there we go. That looks a little bit better. So let's work on the eyes some more. That clipping mask layer 16, going back to that blue again. And switching back to my airbrush now. I just kind of want to build up just that right one there. Going for that nice fade, that nice three-dimensional look. And then I'm going to go ahead and go back in my colors here, going into, let's try this gray here, just doing the shadow in underneath. It's going to be a little bit heavier and darker, so I want that to be not that blue color. Let's actually even go in with the darker one here and see if that looks better. Yeah, I think that looks good there. Not getting it too far down. And just a nice curve there. And then we can also pull this down here at the bottom as well, just to darken that up a little bit as it comes down. Kind of brings home that three-dimensional quality even more. So there we go. Let's go ahead and now let's do the neck down here. So going back up to our color palette or our layers, going to the neck layer, layer 3, adding a new layer, setting this as clipping mask. Going in with this dark black first. I'm just going to do this all in one layer now, and then switching back my brush to my sand here under texture. Hitting that in there a little bit darker, and then going into that blue. I think that'll actually be pretty good there. And then going into the smudge here. And going back in one more time with that darker one towards the top. Back in with the smudge. We just really want that defined, that it's breaking up the head from the neck, and I think that's doing a pretty good job there. So we've got that. Let's go ahead and hit these parts next for the bolts on the side. So let's go ahead and make a new layer here, and we're going to go ahead and clipping mask this one. And then once again, still on the sand here. I'm going to go into that darker black here and just hit the bottom. We're going to have to make this quite a bit smaller brush size. Let's hit the bottom around here. The same thing, bringing this up here. On the top too, kind of fading down because the top's going to give off a shadow there underneath the neck. So get that in there, we can go ahead and go to our smudge again and just kind of bring these a little bit lighter. There's that, and then I'm going to go back in with some white here just on the sides. And down the center to give a little bit more of that metallic look to this. And then smudge them in again. All right, so there we go. We've got those. Let's finally get up here and do the hair. So coming back up to my layers, I'm gonna go to my layer 4, the very top. By this time too, if you're running out of layers, you can start pinching together some of these that we've already done. If you hit the max layers, if you don't have the iPad Pro, if you got one of the smaller ones. I think with a 3000 pixel canvas, you might still be okay. So for this, I'm gonna go ahead and make a new layer, and I'm gonna set this to clipping mask. Going back up to my colors, I'm gonna go to the yellow here. I'm just gonna bring in some yellow across the top here, kind of fading it down. And if you get down too far, just going back in with the eraser once again, going to the sand and pulling that back up. That gives you a nice fade back in to the top. Switch back to my yellow here. Hit the tops of these. Bring down some yellow there. Same thing here on this side. We're gonna have the highlights pretty even, like it's coming down from the top, so it's gonna hit everything pretty equally instead of having it either on one side or the other. Pull up some here as well. Just going for very symmetrical highlights this time. Going back in now with, let's go in with the eraser to kind of taper these up a little bit more. So starting there at the top, we can kind of pull those in so they taper instead of looking really wide. So that looks pretty good there. And then if we go back in now with the white, we can hit the top of this some more. Bring that home a little bit. And same thing here, we can pull in some white here just to make the hair pop a little bit more. It's got a little bit of more shine to it. Like so. In here in the center too. And then going back in with our smudge tool, we can just go ahead and smudge all this together so it blends. Once again, just not getting too far into it to where we lose all the texture. We don't want to do that. Get those in a little bit better. And then I'm going to come back in then with the color of the hair, that gray, and just kind of taper these in again. Let's get those cleaned up ever so slightly. Come back in with my smudge here just a little bit. All right, so there we go. I'm gonna go ahead and now do a little bit more shadows here underneath the hair. So if I go back in here, and let's go ahead underneath the eye layer here, layer 12, which is the darker shadows. Let's make another new layer here, and we'll clipping mask this one. And then I'm gonna go back in with this darker gray, just kind of hit in here underneath some of these. Actually, let me bring this up to, let's just go all the way up above the brow with this one so it comes down. And I'm not gonna set this to clipping mask now, so it will go all over everything. Just want a little bit more shadow around here. But since we don't have it clipping mask, make sure you don't go outside. And then I'm gonna smudge this really quite heavy. I don't want a ton of that texture left. I want this to more just look like a really soft shadow. It's gonna be ever so slight texture, so if you totally want to get rid of the texture completely, you could just start off using the airbrush for this one and probably save yourself some time. I just want a tad bit of that texture though still visible, so it's up to you how you would want to do this part. And then I'm going to go up here and drop the opacity of this one now. I just don't want it too much. Going in with my eraser then, I'm going to go in and just kind of, once again, kind of taper these up a little bit more and clean them up. So there's that. Last here on the face, I want to clean up these top parts here of the brow across the forehead. I think that one was a mix between these two. I'm going to go ahead and merge these two layers now. So we've got everything on the forehead in one. And then I'm going to go in here with my smudge tool. Clean those up just a tad bit. Like that. And then going back in then with some of my yellow here, just to bring out, I don't want too much because these won't have a huge highlight, but I just want to have that blend of the different colors in there. And same thing with the white, just a tad bit of that across. Don't want it to really be highlights so much, just want it to be a gentle switch of that color coming across there. And then going back in darker here towards the top. So there we go. Last thing here that we need to do then is, of course, the teeth. So let's go ahead and go to the teeth layer here, layer number 9. And I'm going to go ahead and just go directly on these. So I'm going to alpha lock this. Going back up to my colors here, this darker brown here on the second row. You get the right brush size here. Just bring around some shadows here for the teeth. Once again, I'm going to blend these quite a bit with that smudge, so I'm not really worried about them too much as far as the way that the texture is coming out. It's gonna kind of flow in a little bit more organically and not look as just rough right now as it does now. So we'll get to that here in a second. I'm gonna pull up in and around the top now too. And then I'm gonna do the same thing here on the bottom. I'm dropping my brush size when I get closer to the edge of where those teeth connect, so that I can kind of define those and they don't overlap there in between the first one and the second one. All right, so there's that. Let's go ahead and go to the smudge tool now. And I'm gonna start just bringing it around. Fading these in so they don't look as grainy. Still got some of that texture there, but not a whole lot. Once again, this is one of those areas, if you wanted to totally lose the texture, you could definitely go in with the airbrush. I like to have some of that texture still left though, just because we've got the rest of it and the rest of the design. So it's totally up to you though, how you want to approach this. There's those. Go ahead and do these as well. So there we go. And then finally, last but not least, I just want to do a basic background, nothing crazy. I know we took forever on this design, so let's make a new layer, drop it all the way to the bottom. Go up here, just grab this blue, and then I'm just going to use my standard inker. Just draw a circle. Nothing crazy. Drop that in there. Grab this uniform and just kind of stretch it. We got this circle behind him, maybe coming out a little bit further past the ears there. About right there. And then with this selected, I'm just gonna go ahead and alpha lock that and then throw in some white here in the background just to break it up. Once again, with my sand. Just do a big brush here and kind of pull in some sand here. So it's got some texture to it too. So there is that. One more time going in with black then, if you wanted to go back in and kind of darken in some areas. This is where I usually go in and just really kind of drive home some of those shadows. I'm not going to go crazy with this because this is another one of those things. You could go on and on with this, just back and forth for hours building this up. But if you go in here, I'm going to go in now just to save some time here, going in with my actual airbrushing brush here, just a soft airbrush, and just kind of hitting some of these. So going over top of it, it's still going to keep those textures down underneath, but you see here, it just kind of darkens in everything that we've already done, and it's going to make it just even more. I'm going to clipping mask this one. It's going to make it just even more defined as far as those shadows and changes in color that we've already got knocked in there. Get there underneath real good. And then you could do this to every single area too. You could go back up and do it to your brow here, knock that in even more. That's probably a little bit too dark there. You can do that. Same thing going back up to your parts here with the brow across here. You could bring those in with those lines across the forehead even more so. If you get too dark then, going back in with the airbrush and just kind of erasing and lightening some of those up. just a very back and forth process. But really urge you guys to kind of use this technique and try it out, see what you can get, because there's a lot of cool looking stuff that you can do. It's one of those things though, like I said, it's going to take some time. It might take a lot longer than you're used to with making a design. I know this one, well, this one's pushing an hour now, so another really long tutorial. Hopefully you guys stuck in there. But yeah, there's just a bunch of different ways that you can create with Procreate. This, of course, just being one of the many. But I really do, guys, I really appreciate you guys watching these, hanging in for these longer tutorials. I have fun doing them. I try not to lose myself too much going through all the techniques and just going back and forth and adding more and more stuff. I know I eventually have to kind of call it a day and call it quits on the design, and that's what I'm going to do right now. So I do need to sign it though. I can't forget that. I forgot to sign one of them so far in the series. So let me do that now. And I'm going to put the right date on it today too, if you guys missed yesterday's. All right, so there we go. Another very, very long tutorial, but I appreciate you guys watching it. This is day number 16 of my 31 days of Halloween. Still more to come, so stay tuned for those. If you like today's video too, do me a favor. It takes a split second. Give it a thumbs up. It helps other people see it. Also, make sure you're subscribed to the channel with notifications turned on so you can get alerted when I post new videos like the rest in this series. Definitely want you guys to stick around for those. If you do take part in these videos too, in these tutorials, and you post them online, definitely I want to see what you come up with. So if you post them on Instagram or Twitter, tag me at BJDell. And then also you can post them in the Facebook group I've got called Keep Creating, a group for artists by artists, place where you can share your artwork, give feedback, get feedback, meet friends. It's an awesome place to be. Want you guys to be a part of it. So I will leave that link in the description below and you guys can hop over there. If you use Facebook, it's a super cool place. And there's a bunch of people showing their artwork off daily. So why aren't you doing it? Get over there. And then other than that, for me, I can be found online, bjdell.com, as well as the new podcast that I'm doing, Make Money With Your Art, available wherever you listen to find podcasts at. So that could be Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon, the whole nine. It's everywhere. So check it out if you want to learn about making money with your art. And that's it for me. Until tomorrow, will you join me then? I hope so. So until then, keep creating.